Hey, so it is good to get together again with everybody looking at book 2 of the Imitation of Christ. We lit off last week with a very successful, although not planned, evening because I was really looking at getting through a series of themes in book 1, and everybody loved it so much we got bogged down in the first 2 letters or 2 chapters. So just as a momentary review of chapter 1, and part of the hope that I had for you was to go back and reread the 23rd chapter. And if we have time tonight, we'll just take a quick look at the 23rd chapter, which is the second to last chapter in book 1, because the title of it is Thoughts on Death. And that's really important. It's a very important chapter because it puts into a context the entirety of what Thomas wanted us to meditate on or reflect on in book 1. 2 of the major themes in book 1 are vanity, which we talked about, the difference between vainglory and vanity. We talked about pride as one of the 7 deadly sins, and the positive affect that pride is the only one of the sins that has a virtuous side. And the other one is humility, vanity and humility. And book 1 moves this back and forth, showing the juxtaposition of the two, how vanity leads to death. And we hear that from Solomon, don't we, in Ecclesiastes, that vanity as a worldview is always going to lead to death, because vanity itself is a dead end. The vain thoughts will always lead us into dysfunction. They'll always lead us into a place where what we thought was wonderful isn't wonderful enough. Vanity is constantly upping the ante, so that we're satisfied with something, and then suddenly one day we're not anymore. When we're not satisfied, we need to trade up. And we spend a lifetime of trading up and trading up and trading up. Really chasing, the Marine Corps, we used to call it chasing the bullseye. You just keep shooting and firing and firing and firing and firing, and you never hit the bullseye. The rounds just go around and around in a circle. There's a good reason for that. You're chasing, you're running around with the rounds. So Thomas is really talking at length in chapter 1 about identifying within the self the propensity for self-imagery and the absolute need, the necessity of radical, holy humility, relinquishing and giving up the self over to Christ. So we're into chapter 2, or book 2 rather, and I'm going to just pick out 4 or 5 of the major themes and move through the letters that we were going to. I'm going to keep doing this, the chapters that I hope that you had a chance to read. Chapter 2, but I did it again. Book 2 is the shortest of the 4 books, and they're all key books in the book. So I really hope that you have a chance to read through the whole thing or listen to it. There may come a time when we're able to do it as a full-blown book study and take the time that this book deserves to really go through the themes and understand what they are. So we were looking at chapters 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 12 of book 2. And I can identify with you one of the major themes. Now, what I want to do with this too is that looking at a major theme from what you've read, I would love it if you find that theme, if you hear this resonating with what you've read, that you would just come back with your experience of one of these letters, or even if it's not one of the letters that are on the list that I have given you for homework. If something has stood out to you when you were reading, chapter 9, which is not on our list, and you want to throw that in the mix, then you are encouraged to do that. If you look on the first page in chapter 1 on meditation, one of the key themes for this book is found multiple times on this page, and it'll be multiple times throughout the entire book. And it is found in the very first line after the quote from Luke, which is, "The kingdom of God is within you." There's a key theme from scripture. And the first line from Thomas, "Turn then to God with all your heart." If you jump down, you're going to find the word inward man in the middle of the next paragraph, in your heart in the middle of the paragraph. In the third paragraph, prepare your heart. The second line of that third paragraph, dwell within you. And then the last fourth paragraph, give place then to Christ, but deny entrance to others. key theme for this entire book is an interiority, an interior place, the preparation of the place, which you've done in book one, right? You've cleared the vanity out of yourself. You've opened up this place. You've swept it clean. You're humble now. When you're humble, you're receptive. So now that you are cultivating a sense of humility, Thomas comes back and says, the only thing that fertile ground is that it is worthy to be planted in that fertile ground is Christ's self. So he's saying this whole chapter is about the interior life, how we manage, understand, and cultivate our interiority, how we push that forward. Another key theme we'll find at the bottom of the same page, which is the last line that I have. Let me make sure it's the last line on yours too. Yes, last line of chapter 4, or paragraph 4 rather, is Christ remains forever, standing firmly with us to the end. So another key theme we have in this book is that we'll see it as we move through it, that Thomas is going to talk about how everything is fleeting, not the least of which are people. So here we have in the next paragraph, in the very center of that paragraph, beginning on the right, actually that's not true. My formatting, yours is going to be different. The second full sentence of the fourth paragraph says, those who are with us today may be against us tomorrow, and vice versa, for men change with the wind. And another hat tip to Solomon. Wind, blow with the wind. So Christ is the dependable center that can and should propagate this humble, fertile ground that we prepared for him. But everything else and everyone we put our heart and our attention into will let us down at one time or another. And the most grievous of those are the people that are the closest to us. And he talks about that as well. And he says, when that happens, because it will happen, it's not if it happens, it will happen. How then are we able to respond? Are we able to respond then out of a false anger, which is really just pride, or is it out of compassion and humility, knowing who we truly are? And so he moves on with that. Even in the 6th paragraph of the same letter, the same chapter, he says, why do you look about here when this is not the place of your repose? Dwell rather upon heaven, but give a passing glance to earthly things.
So true.
This is all fleeting and floating away. Are you Warren's okay? You on the right paragraph?
I'm a little bit lost. You're in what chapter?
It's book 2, chapter 1.
Okay.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm in the 6th, 7th paragraph.
6. That starts with the person who understands all things. Is that right?
Not on mine. I don't know. Do you have you may have a different translation, but it shouldn't be that far apart. Anybody,
okay, maybe I do.
Anybody have that, what Sharon just said? So
It's William C.
You are in book 2, first chapter, right? Which is the interior life.
Yes.
Wow, that's a very different translation. So read that again. That was very interesting.
It's William Creasy.
That's where did you get that?
Amazon.
Okay, really?
Do you know him?
It's a very new translation. It's gotten a fair amount of, okay, dang, you lucky person, you. Wow, can I have that?
He's got a lot of commentary. Yeah.
Yeah, that is Creasy's own translation. It's a unique translation. It's brand new. In fact, that's probably the only printed version of it is that book.
Okay.
So I don't have it. He has taken the interpretation of Christ and made it very contemporary. So that's a very contemporized version. So it's going to be very different from what we've got here.
I'm sorry, can you say the author's name again? Is it Creecy?
Creasy.
Right. Now,
Okay.
he's not the author of that book. He's the translator. Isn't that right?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I stand corrected.
Yeah. The author is I believe that book is a commentary, and that the commentator, what's his name? Is it Schmaler?
Commentary translation, William Creasy, with special commentary by Dennis Billy.
Billy, that's who it is.
Huh.
So Billy he initiated the project, and he got Creasy to translate it into a very, very vernacular version. So yeah, look up Billy and Creasy and you'll get it. It's the only one
Thank
out there, the only book like that out there. Well, good for you, but you're going to be lost. Sorry. We'll have to get you, you have to jump online. I would use that as a companion in the same way that I do book study, and I oftentimes have the Jerusalem Bible in one hand and the NIV in the other.
Yeah.
Just keep going back and forth. All right, so moving on to, let's see, that was the 7th, 8th, 9th. So you can just keep on going. I'll try to keep labeling the paragraphs. The 9th paragraph is another theme. And this begins in ours as when Christ was in the world, he was despised by men. In the hour of need, he was forsaken by acquaintances and left by friends to the depths of scorn. So this is another affirmation of the prior theme of these people can't be important. They cannot hold this place of preeminence in your life because they will leave you. Look what happened. You have Christ that came, and he was turned on by the very people who were there to extol him and lift him up, and they turned their back. If they had been seeding that fertile ground with God, they would have recognized Christ. But because they are not dependable, and because they had seeded that ground with somebody or something else, and we know that from Scripture, we hear the something is very often referred to as vanity. That because that ground is already planted and already filled, there is no place for Christ to take root. This is the rocky soil. The soil in this parable, it would be that the soil was actually planted with rock. That at one time there was fertile ground there, but the person, put down pavers. And the pavers are their own vain understanding of their life. And because you can't grow anything on pavers, Christ cannot take root in that life at all. They're bereft of it. So this theme that comes out of this paragraph is God against the world, or the world against God. Now, the theme that Thomas is going to show us later on as we read through the letters is that as you become and grow deeper in your faith and grow deeper and closer to God and become more spiritual and more understanding, you will grow more distant from the world, and you will attract more ire and criticism from the world. It's not a natural evolution. It is a spiritual evolution. Remember, Satan doesn't care about his own, right? He doesn't care about the people that are already headed his way. He's already got them. Doesn't have to do anything. No effort required. It's the people who aren't headed his way that he's going to give all his attention to, because he doesn't want people to go away from his direction. He wants them to come closer. So he's going to pour all of his attention into people that he's losing rather than the ones that he's already got. So Thomas is saying that as you grow in your spiritual life, you will find that you're fighting against yourself and against forces much more than you ever did before. In fact, I can tell you spiritually, this is one of the greatest drawbacks for Christians that are on spiritual pilgrimage, and why so many start and so many fail. Because they begin down this road of awareness and depth of wisdom in God, and then they hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, both within themselves and outside the world. They hit places in themselves where they fail in their attempts to persevere, fail in their attempts to do, fail in their attempts to fail in their attempts. It just keeps on building up, and then they are seemingly out of nowhere confronted with rejection and aggressive behaviors of other people focused on their spiritual life, on their faith life. And rather than fight this fight, which means losing my friend, losing Susie, I can't have tea with Susie anymore, or I can't go out to the ball game with John anymore, or whatever it may be. Rather than lose this person as my friend, I dial back my spiritual quest. And of course, you're just falling right into those key themes, aren't we? That Thomas is putting out. I put too much faith in that person, and now I've planted that person in that soil, that fertile soil that should have been for God, and that vanity just crept right back in because I'm too important to lose my best friend or my good friend or my acquaintance, and that's just vain. So these themes, keep thinking of these themes as we move forward. Another, as Thomas is known to do in the prior book and in other writings, this next page is going to move us into second chapter, but it covers another theme. There's another key theme here. And this is in, let's see, what was that paragraph number I said to you, Sharon? 9?
Yes.
Okay, so this is going to be 10, 11, 12, 13. 13th. In our translation, this translation, it begins, he who learns to live the interior life and to take little account of outward things does not seek special places or times to perform devotion and exercise. So this is, I shouldn't say it's a different key theme. It's the same theme reiterated for the rest of this letter. This interior life. In fact, the last line of this letter or this chapter in this translation is, but if you refuse external consolation, you'll be able to contemplate heavenly things and often to experience interior joy. Remembering now that the joy that we're talking about in God is not the wonderful joy that we feel at Christmas looking at a child open their presents. You know, that sort of frothy, wonderful, welling up joy that just is like, oh, I just want to freeze this moment. Those are wonderful, wonderful, incredible moments that we do want to freeze. That's why we want to freeze them. This joy, the joy of God planted in us, is different. It is a deep, resonant well, a well that does not have necessarily that frothy, joyful emotion. It can, but more often than not is the joy is described as a sense of completeness, of wholeness, where in this moment, we're very near to this, in this moment, very near in this moment, I feel as if all things were whole, were right, were complete. And it is a calm, sensate moment that is almost indescribable. The church fathers and mothers use the word joy. It's the closest thing we have to that. You can see I'm struggling right now to use the language to convey it to you. It is what I don't want to do. I don't want to leave this image forever of that when Jesus says, be filled with joy, he's talking about going, oh, this is great. Oh, you know, that can be a part of our joy as a dramatic expression of joy. That is not what he is talking about. This is really this deep well of wholeness that covers our whole being. And we are no longer, I'm not afraid, I'm not incomplete, I'm not lost, all those things are gone. And in that moment, for that moment, as long as that moment is, all is right. This is the joy of God, because this is the only time that we can experience that in our lifetime, is in the presence of God. So this is why Thomas is going to make this interior life theme as so important, and why the get rid of the vanity and bring on the humility is so important, because that ground has to be tilled and has to be fertile for the coming of Christ. All right, so moving on now. Anybody have anything to say about chapter 1, book 1, chapter 1, book 1, 2? Sorry, before we go any further, we got these key themes moving into this. Actually, that was I in? Yeah, second. So in the second chapter, we talked.
I'm sorry, Father Bill, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely, yes.
And let me count the paragraphs, because I don't want to lead you down. I'm looking at the translation I sent to you that I have.
Mhm.
So I think it's the 9th paragraph. In my translation, it is. It may be in yours.
Okay.
But the last sentence of that says, suffer with Christ and for Christ if you wish to reign with him.
Mhm.
I'd like to understand that a little better from your perspective.
Yeah, the partnership in eternity. So to reign with Christ is to be one with Christ in eternity. One with Christ with eternity is made whole in Christ in eternity. So what is to reign? We always think about reigning as like, if I reign with you, I get to tell the serfs what to do, you know, the peasantry and like that. But God's promise for us in eternity is wholeness, is completeness, that all things, all people, all places, everything will be made whole. This is the reign of God, the reign of Christ, Christ the King. The reign of Christ, the King in eternity, is not like we think historically of the king who, you know, rules the countryside and puts everything in order and you do your thing. The reign of Christ is the wholeness of Christ in all of things, in all people. This same wholeness that we're talking about as joy is this wholeness that will be ours forever, permeated through all things. So it's just the wholeness of creation finds itself in the wholeness of God. That work? That's
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to unmute, but yes, it did. Thank you so much.
That's all right. Absolutely. So just moving it through humility. I mean, this is the second chapter is just a reiteration of what we're talking about. And Thomas loves to keep going around with this. In that last chapter, the second to last sentence in my verse says, in my translation, thus the humble man enjoys peace in the midst of many vexations because his trust is in God and not in the world. You know, two more themes, the same two themes, they're popping back up again. Where do I find trust? I find trust in God. If my trust is in God, then all, you know, hell and high water, Mom used to say. The things that can go bad and go wrong will. But that's an assurance. So how do I respond to that? Do I panic? We all know that panic is of the devil, right? Panic is a devilish thing. Panic has absolutely no positive affect, zero. It's like ash. Nothing good comes from panic, nothing. Panic immobilizes the individual and completely truncates any ability for life. That's it, done. He's saying here that the humble person finds this peace in the midst of all things. No more panic. Why would I panic? It doesn't matter what happens.
Right.
I mean, this is going to sound crass, right? Oh, my arm's ripped off. Wow. Just so long as you stop the bleeding, right? Okay. Let's see if we can't get it fixed. You got it. Let's go off to the dock, get it on ice, and let's see if we can put it back together. It is this sense that says what is, and what will be. And because I am united with Christ, and I'm united with God, when I find my solace and my consolation in God, I will hit these things running. I will take them head on, but they are not going to drive me into this place of fear and anxiety and horror and panic. Just not going to happen. The panic is brought on because of you know, well, they're aside from biomechanical reasons, biomedical reasons, chemical reasons. Panic is a displaced emphasis on the impact of an event or a thing on my life, and the thought of it immobilizes me, and I'm unable to move. There aren't really, well, according to him in Scripture, there aren't really anything. There's no event in life that can do that. There's only events that can do that when I give those events power to do that. This is a recipe for freedom from all of these things. You know, we don't want to lose track of the idea that says freedom does not equal complacency. Freedom does not equal not caring. You may care immensely, 100% care for this thing that's happening. But in the midst of this thing happening, it doesn't mean you're going to panic. It doesn't mean you're going to lose your ability to function or lose your ability to deal with it or any of this. You can care about it and manage it at the same time. And this is part of what Thomas is saying. This is this peace that is pervasive and overpowering. Yeah. Okay. Fourth chapter. Again, he's bringing this back around in the first. What does yours say? I want to hear what Sharon says. Read me the first sentence of the fourth chapter, purity of mind and unity of purpose. What's the first sentence?
2 wings lift a person up from earthly concerns, simplicity and purity.
That's very close.
Simplicity should be in intention, purity in feelings. Simplicity reaches out after God. Purity catches hold and tastes.
That's very close. That's very close. I like that. I like the tastes. That's nice. Ours says simplicity leads to God. Purity embraces and enjoys God. So he's made it a little more tactile in the taste side, so just holding on. This idea of simplicity and purity, we in spiritual direction, I can tell you oftentimes the quest for God in spiritual direction oftentimes is too complicated. People come in, they're very, very excited, and they're taking on so many different things to find God that it's very exciting, but it's very complicated. And to get down to doing something very simple and very straightforward, very focused, will start to clear things up. And these exercises or these patterns of doing something simple and focused, oftentimes I find when people do the right exercise, it has the process of clearing away things they didn't know were overbearing their spiritual search. It's like a lawnmower. They think that what we're doing is planting a new bush among all the other bushes that they've planted. But really what we're doing is we're taking a sickle and chopping a whole bunch of stuff down. It's just the thing that we're using and it always works to the positive. To live a simple perspective, a simple approach, and purity, coming to our spiritual life and our process of God from a place of trust and hope and holy desire, rather than a place of anxiety and frustration and compulsion. I must find God. I must make it. I must do it. Everybody will get far, and then they will stop, and their spiritual development will stop with them. And either they will live in that place and learn to be okay with it, or they will get frustrated and then begin to get a little resentful, and then they'll get tough. And then they will maintain the practice and they will lose the spirit. So we don't want that. Nobody wants that. Humility, this focus and devotion on God, the movement of God from the peripheral. I did a sermon, I don't know, so long ago. I brought in a plate and I had my food on the plate. And what Christianity really is, in a lot of times when we practice it, is it's more like a condiment. And it's on the table. And then we take it and we sprinkle it on the parts of our life that we are, a little bit of here on this, and a little bit of here on that. And we're not too much though, just enough flavor to make it nice. And usually the image is, right, everything's on the table and the condiment's the center of the plate. The condiment makes everything else right and wrong. It's just not the other way around. So this is the fertile ground that Thomas is talking about for us. And again, in this chapter, the 5th chapter, we hear it all over again. In the second, I jumped ahead. I hope that's okay. We're going to have time to come back. I just want to make sure we do have time to come back. the second full chapter or paragraph, the interior man puts the care of himself before all other concerns. So we're back to this interior person. What does the interior person do? This is what the interior person do. This sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? I'm supposed to be a Christian. I'm not thinking of me. I'm thinking of God. But he's saying here, but the interior man thinks of himself. So what does he mean? He's talking about the need to know the self, major theme of all 4 books. To know the self, to know who I am, and be humble and be willing to excise that person that I find there, because you know, and I know, that when you get down to the nitty-gritty and you start looking deep inside, that person in there, you're going to want them out. They're not the person that you want living inside of you. You want somebody else. And that's why you're seeking God, because you want God to fix that person, to make that person better, right, and true and pure and all that other stuff. Yes.
I think when you're living your life during any time during any day, and you react to something, or you not only react, but you're repelled or you're attracted, and to analyze your actions and your emotions, and to think, why did I do this? Is this the way I should be acting? Or what? Just, I think just analyzing yourself, as he said, and seeing yourself in the way that you think God would want you to be, and using that as an example.
Yes.
So it really is an everyday, every minute practice.
Right. Yeah. And if you have not, here's a codicil, you guys know this. If you have not had this practice in your life, there's 1,000 reasons. Do not be hard on yourself, okay? There are 1,000 reasons why people develop the habits of talking about or commenting on, thoughts and thoughts of reasons. But if you have that practice, you know how incredibly hard it is to stop. It's just next to impossible sometimes to not make a comment about the person and the thing. Especially when it's going on around you, and it's seemingly the only way to enter into the conversation is to make a comment. But if we listen to Thomas is saying all of that practice from all the people that are doing it, as well as yourself, is proof in the pudding when we find that it's such a compulsion to say something. It's a compulsion that we get in and make a comment about this person, about this thing, about this stuff. It's just, I can't stop myself, which means I'm out of control. And God does not want us out of control. So it can't be a godly thing. There must be another reason for it. There must be a deeper reason. What Lee is saying is exactly right. It's that thing that says, when I say something, looking at why I said it, why did I even think it? Why did this come up? And how do I stop it? And just recognizing that it's hard to stop it is a great first step, because the next place you go to is to God, to say, I need help. I can't do this. So maybe in a conversation where you would have said 5 things, you only say 3. And you don't do the 2. And if you do that with the 5 and you only say 3, then next time it's going to be 5 and 2 and 5 and 1, and then maybe 0. And he continues this in that same paragraph by saying, in the second complete sentence, you'll never be devout of heart unless you are thus silent about the affairs of others and pay particular attention to yourself. And the next paragraph he begins, where are your thoughts when they are not upon yourself? What does yours say on that one, Sharon?
I don't even have the same number of paragraphs that you do.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Wow, he didn't even make an attempt to match it, huh? That's interesting.
No.
This will be
Well, yeah, but it's in the same paragraphs. It's really concise.
Okay. I would have thought that he would have tried to put the paragraphs parallel so that it could be matched. This brings us to another key thing for Thomas, and that is temporal cares are God killers. Temporal cares are God killers. And what I mean by this, because this is my giving a theme name to Thomas. What I mean by this is he is saying that when we put all of our care and focus on these things in our life that then disappoint us and give us grief and make us angry, or when we want something we don't have and we put all of our attention and we are kind of have covetousness about this thing, whether or not somebody else owns it or if Amazon's got it, I just really want it. When we put all of our care into these temporal things, the space that should be occupied by thoughts about God, by the feeling of the presence of God, by the energy that should be going toward our spiritual well-being and communion with God, all of these things have been usurped. So in this moment, I should be feeling the presence of God, but it's completely killed because I'm looking at Amazon at this daggone frying pan that doesn't stick. And I just want it so bad. And I'm just like, man, this is just not fair. I don't have it. So I'm feeling kind of coveting, and I'm feeling like a failure because I can't afford the frying pan. And I just, I don't know if I should get it. And then for the next 2 days, I'm thinking about, should I just go ahead and splurge and buy it? And should I not buy it? And it occupies all my time. And God's dead. God's not in my head. It's not in my heart. He's not in my reasoning. Temporal cares are God killers. And Thomas will go over this over and over. And that next paragraph, he says, consider nothing great, nothing high, nothing pleasing, nothing acceptable, except God's self, or that which is of God, period. Not too strong a statement from him. All right, jumping into chapter, whoops, where did we go? I'm gonna jump all the way to 10. Now we're gonna have time to come back. So don't worry, if you're like, I wanted to say something. And you haven't done it yet, we have time to come back. Chapter 10, appreciating God's grace. I love this first line in ours. What's your first line in chapter 10, Sharon? First sentence.
Why do you look for rest when you were born for work?
Okay, so it's almost identical. Why do you look for rest when you're born? See, he didn't change it at all. This is a brilliant line. It's brilliant because we have a tendency to often think of that spiritual development and depth should be easy, and we count ourselves to be failures when it's not. Like I should have this by now. I should be like falling off a log. That's one. And the second one is that I feel like it should come easy to me. It shouldn't be something I have to work at. So I just sit back and wait. I mean, I said my prayers and read my book, and now I'm not thinking about bad things, so it's okay. God's coming. Okay. And then you go to bed, right? Because you get tired. So this line, it says, why do you look for rest when you were born to work? That work that we are born to do outside with this thing we've got right here also is inside. The design that God has put into us to be goers and doers and producing and making and tending is part of what we are inside. It's part of our makeup, outside and inside. I've told you this thing years ago about the orthopedic report that said they were seeing back injuries, 2 back injuries they've never seen in 2 categories before. They were seeing back injuries in small children that they were seeing in adult ditch workers. And it was because children were carrying those backpacks that weigh like 80 pounds to school. Remember those things? Looked like they had a whole nother person on their back. And so the orthopedic people were sending words out to parents saying, don't let them do that. It's like some weird national trend. Well, the second one were the same back injuries of ditch digger people, but this time they were seeing these back injuries in middle-aged people who didn't dig ditches. You know what they did? They sat in chairs all day, working on computers. And it was their backs had become so atrophied, the muscular ability of their back to do anything was so atrophied that they began to have these these gross muscle strains in their back as if they were doing heavy work, digging ditches and overworking their back, but they weren't doing anything. They were sitting. And the orthopedics, the doctors came out and said, the reason why is because you're designed you're designed to bend over and stand up and lift and carry and walk and be. And you can't do this. If you do this, this is what happens. You get these weird back injuries or leg injuries or shoulder injuries because you simply are not using your body. And I know you all have had people in your life that have stopped using themselves, using their body. And there's a certain period in life that it's a weird thing. If you stop being active, you go real fast. If you stay active, you're fine. You just stay active. I think of Jack Hardy a lot when I think about people, he's in his late 80s and he's just going strong. And it's because he goes, my mom, same thing. Mom climbs stairs up and down every day, all the time. You keep yourself going, you keep going. You stop going, you don't do it. Our system is designed to keep going. And as long as we keep going, it's okay. So this first line, why do you look for rest when you're born to work? We are designed to seek after God. Our whole purpose of our life spiritually is to find God, and it's work. It's work. It takes effort and it takes devotion. It takes focus and it takes that attitude of I can't wait for the next thing. I can't wait for the next moment. I'm going to get closer to God in the next moment. Right now, I can't feel God at all. Completely bereft, dark night of the soul. God's gone. God is not here anymore. Empty room. Okay, what's next? You're just going to keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. And when God comes back after the dark night, God comes back after the dark night. You don't want to lose yourself in the moments where we think we are alone. It's not happening. That one in mine, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph. I do not desire consolation that robs me of contrition, nor do I care for contemplation that leads to pride. So it's a tricky sentence. Don't want to spend too much time on it. It's worth contemplating on your own. This idea says, I do not desire consolation that robs me of contrition. I don't want to think myself great for the things that I'm doing and not ask for forgiveness for doing it the way I'm doing it. There has to be that. In other words, he's saying that as you advance in your spiritual life, don't lose your humility. What's yours say? Did you find the compendium? No place? No.
I can't even find it.
Well, you know what I'm going to do, Sharon? I'm going to buy that book this week and see if I can't double it up, because I read some of that translation and I found it very compelling. So I will do that.
You'll get it in a day.
I will look forward to it. Next week I'll use it side by side. I just like this line. This is in our book, and it's the second to last paragraph, center sentence. It begins with "and," so it's the 1 to 3rd complete sentence. And if you but look to the dignity of the giver, no gift will appear too small or worthless. You ever get a present from somebody?
Here, it's up here.
When you got it, you were disappointed because it wasn't as cool as you thought it was going to be. It wasn't as big. It wasn't as expensive, especially if they gave something else to someone else and it cost more money and you knew it. You remember that feeling? It's a terrible feeling. And what's terrible about it? It's icky to think it. It's icky to have it. And here he's talking about that with everybody. Of course, he's talking about this with God. If you knew that God had given you a gift, a tiny little gift in the moment of joy or of peace or of love, or just open your eyes to something beautiful in that moment. If you knew God did that it was just a tiny gift, would that be so tiny that you would be resentful of God? Because it wasn't some huge gift like, prophecy or healing or something. What if we were able to see that God gives us these tiny gifts in every moment? How would life be different? All right, chapter 11. We're at, oh, no, skipping 11, going to 12. The royal road of the Holy Cross. I'll finish up here. I'll give this about 8 minutes. Shoot, I'm 2 minutes over. Just this thing. I've always been about the cross. I have crosses all over the place. I have tons of crosses. They're everywhere. Because there is a deep resonance. I'm going to say this for you. I've tried to write it down. The cross for Thomas and for you and me, the cross, the physical cross, equals the entire truth of the person of Christ and the action of the sacrifice for me. Right? The cross of Christ is not just that symbol, but the symbol is the entire truth of the person of Christ and the action of sacrifice for me. So when he talks about this about the cross, I mean, the second paragraph for us is just epic. In the cross is salvation. In the cross is life. In the cross is protection from enemies. In the cross is infusion of heavenly sweetness. In the cross is strength of mind. In the cross is joy of spirit. In the cross is highest virtue. In the cross is perfect holiness. I'd like to make it into a song. I don't have to print it like this big and hang it on the wall. To understand this is a key theme. This is a huge key theme. The cross of Christ, the summation of the cross of Christ, is the everything to me. I enter into this moment in time in the person of Christ, in the cross of Christ, and time now stands still for me. If we could hold on to this, our whole life would become this moment of realization in the person of Christ, the summation of the cross, the sacrifice. Remembering, you have to turn all of salvation history into an I statement. God made the universe for me. God allowed me to choose. God came to save me. God gave himself up for me. God rose for me to teach me how to rise myself. This is, from the beginning of creation till this moment that we're talking, God has done every single thing specifically with your name on God's lips. Now, if we each could live in that, oh my gosh, everything would change. So this is the way Thomas is putting it. This cross represents the sacrifice of God. Nothing is greater in all of creation. Think about this, and I'm going to stop. Think about this. There's nothing greater in all, and you think about creation, there is nothing greater in all of creation than the fact that God, who created everything, died in it, breathing your name. If it wasn't a human, if God wasn't human to make it accessible, it would be inconceivable. I couldn't wrap my brain around the creator of the universe dying down the street for me. But we can. God, who created everything, died for me. It's just, if we can own that, life will be instantaneously, in the same way that if you had somebody who literally jumped in front of you and pushed you out of the way, and then he was hit by the car and died. The change in your life, you know it just by thinking it would be palpable. How could you ever repay it? People spend their entire lifetimes trying to pay back their life for somebody who pushed them out of the way, or in combat took a bullet, or whatever it was for them, and they can't. They're so devastated by what they owe. And this, we have to translate that to God did that for us, and said, oh, and by the way, you don't have to pay me back. This was just a gift. So this is the cross for that Thomas is talking about. Okay, anybody, what do you got? What do you think? How do you feel? Kind of bowled over, huh? Mm-hmm. The 23rd, you have to, now we've done tonight, go back to the 23rd chapter of book 1 from last time on your own, which again is thoughts on death. And look at that.
I love your commentary and all your thoughts on it. It's really so powerful and insightful. One thing that I noted in my book is in the 12th chapter when it's talking about the cross.
Yeah.
And let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th paragraph down. It says, at times you will be forsaken by God, at times troubled by those about you. And what is worse, you will often grow weary of yourself. You cannot escape. You cannot be relieved by any remedy or comfort, but must bear with it as long as God wills. For he wishes you to learn to bear trial without consolation, to submit yourself wholly to him, that you may become more humble through suffering. So I thought that was a really good thing to read and think about, that at times we'll be weary of even ourselves, maybe frustrated, is another way that we think of it, frustrated, or, maybe even disgusted or just fed up and weary about what we're doing and where we are with different things in our life, and certainly with a spiritual, our spiritual path or progress or feeling of lack thereof. And, we don't know why God takes those breaks from our, what we feel is a break in giving us that forward movement in what we want. But that happens, we don't always feel like we're moving forward. And we just have to, in those moments, surrender and think that, okay, this is here for a reason, this is here for a purpose, and there's something for me to learn from it. And if I can surrender at God's feet and at the foot of the cross and wait on God, then it will turn around and it will come.
Yes. Thank you. Absolutely.
Sue, I had similar thoughts as you with that, and I underlined this and started and did everything else. The same statement you just read. I had the same types of feelings about it and realizations about it.
Does anybody get hung up with this? And if you read this, you hear that Thomas says over and over about the same sentiment. You cannot escape. You cannot be relieved by any remedy or comfort, but must bear with it as long as God wills. And that sentiment comes back over and over, not only in Thomas, but in Scripture, that God wills. Does anybody get hung up on that? Like God will?
It would be, I think, easy to get hung up on that. And I think, it has to do with that element of surrender. If we feel like we can fix it, we're not going to surrender to God. If we can do one more thing, if we can do one more thing, and maybe just this one thing,
Yeah.
it'll all get fixed. So as long as God wills, it's not that God is willing us to, it's not that God is spiteful or doing anything against us in that way. But God is putting something in front of us, that inability to fix it, so that we ultimately will say, okay, God, I can't fix it. It's up to you.
Right. Just
And
allowing.
in that moment, then we're open enough to receive the grace from God to fix it.
Just allowing it to happen. You think about being a parent or being a caregiver for somebody, where you have let them do, especially as a parent, it's definitely a parent thing, when you've let your child do something that is not going to turn out well. And if it happens and the child comes back at you and they get mad at you, and then they realize that, this may happen as an adult. In fact, the last time it did happen, the adult says, you knew that would happen and you didn't stop me. And the reason why the adult is mad is because it's the same thing as the person wanting it to happen. They willed it. And that's what makes you mad, because you feel like, well, you could have fixed this. You could have fixed it for me before I did it. So it's not necessarily that I want this bad thing to happen, or I want this terrible thing to go on, but I will let it happen in order for the outcome to be a benefit to you. It's a teaching moment. And Lord, we need those. So yeah. Cheryl, I also had this circled and starred and all all this stuff in my book right there, just same paragraph, Sue. So yeah, I think it is a key paragraph.
Definitely.
Father Bill, I had a couple comments too as we went through here. Oh,
Sure.
Cheryl can go ahead first. Did you have something, Cheryl?
Oh, no, Judy, go ahead.
Okay, and back in chapter 23, as he's talking, do what you can do now, gather for yourself the riches of immortality, make friends for yourself now, imitate their actions. He almost sounded like he was promoting works. And I wondered if that time, the time he wrote that in 1400 or something. And it was the Reformation came about in the 1500s. didn't
Right.
it?
Yep.
And that was certainly such a big issue with the church was whether we're saved by grace or we are saved by grace through faith, or whether it's works that does it. And I just somehow that caught my attention and I gave it some thought.
Which paragraph is that?
Well, it's not a paragraph. It was the whole page when he said, you need to give up everything, always be wary and mindful of death. It's all right to live in such a manner that at the moment of death, you'll be glad. But there are so many things that you do to try to be good
Mm-hmm.
that works itself into works, doesn't it?
Right. Absolutely.
And that's the danger of that whole thing.
Yes. I like in the middle of that, you notice he says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seventh paragraph, it's chapter 23, book 1. She's talking about this paragraph that starts, do not put your trust in friends or relatives and do not put off the care of your soul till later. For men will forget you more quickly than you think.
Yeah.
You say if you spend all your time trying to impress these people with whatever it is you're trying to impress them, and then you drop dead,
Yep.
you're not ready and they're not going to remember. And that's not mean. That's not. Somebody, yeah. I was talking to somebody about this and they were saying that's not this particular part, this particular verse, but this sentiment of 23. And they were saying that's a really mean. I mean, the guy was really mean. I mean, telling you nobody's going to remember you. No one's going to remember you. They don't remember anything about you. I'm like, okay, so my great-great-grandfather was a baker in Washington, D.C. And he was best baker. He won all kinds of baking awards. In fact, this big silver urn. I have it. Burk's Bakery. Woohoo!
Oh,
And aside from that and a couple of other little things, I don't know anything. That's all I know. And the reality is that even if I write them down, and Sue writes them down, and Nancy writes them down, and Martin writes them down, then nobody will ever know that stuff again. And if they pick it up on a sheet of paper in a generation and they read it, they'll forget it as soon as they'll go, oh, that's nice. And they put it down. It's not mean, it's real, it's true. I mean, we do have people that are, famous, like George Washington. Everybody knows George Washington. But I'm not sure that they really know George Washington. I think that the historical people are historical people, and they're not as well known as people think that they are.
I look at it this way. My husband and I go to a lot of antiquing places, and they frequently, a lot of these places have pictures that they've gotten from estates. And there are pictures of people that you look at them and you're like, I wish I knew who you were. I wish I could hear your story. You see pictures of children, you see pictures of older people, you see pictures of people in their prime, and you're like, what was life back when you lived? And I mean, it is sad, but it's true. Exactly as you say, Father Bill.
I'm sure that my grandfather, I'm not sure, but I imagine that my grandfather was trying to be the best baker that he could possibly be, because he wanted to be the best baker he could possibly be, not because he thought that 3 generations later they're going to be thinking about him. That was his thing. So Thomas is saying your thing is to grow deep in your relationship with Jesus Christ, and who gives a hoot about what the other things are going on? If that's what you're thinking about, you're gonna cut your knees off. Don't do it. Yeah. Thank you, Judy. That was a great observation.
well, I had another one. when the last, when I guess I was, well, it doesn't make any difference where I was. As we go through all these chapters, there's so much in there about suffering with Christ. And I
Suffering.
was trying to picture myself suffering with Christ. I mean, I don't, you know, Christ in my mind was a long time ago, and I'm now, and I couldn't do it. But I remembered something the other evening that you told us a couple years ago in this book group, that Christ doesn't have a timeline like we do. So that if I'm suffering from something today, obviously it would be much more minor than what he went through. His timeline can be the same as my timeline, and somehow we can suffer together. Did I remember any of that well
Sure.
or
Yeah.
correctly?
Yeah, the suffering that there are two avenues to joining in the suffering of Christ. One is the spiritual aspect and affect of suffering with Christ is all of the rejection and the turmoil that he suffered at the hands of others, that we suffer at our own hands. I mean, he was the perfect human being, the perfect holy being. He was, you know, God made flesh. And the suffering that he endured was the suffering of those who did not understand and rejected that. So now let's think about ourselves. We have God knocking on our spirit's door, trying to get in.
Yeah.
And we're doing the same thing. We're blocking God out with all of the concerns about the world, blocking Christ's presence from us with all of our concerns and ideas and our looking out and our preoccupations with everything else. This is that phrase. If you ever hear this phrase, it's in music, you know, that we crucify Christ again every day. That's the heart of this phrase. The heart of the phrase is that by not accepting Christ's gift of salvation and presence in me in the way that it was given, I'm doing the same thing the Sadducees did. I don't think of it that way. Then in the same way, how does that affect me? I'm suffering. I'm broken because of it. In fact, I'm left in my fear and my anxiety and my heartache and the difficulties and my shattered perspective and my preoccupation with so many things. I told Jenny, yes, I was yesterday, said I just don't want to listen to the news anymore. Every 15 minutes, half hour, an hour I spend listening to the news is a half an hour I am not listening to God. Flat out true. I just can't listen to one fully and listen to the other fully too. You can't do it. It's like trying to drink two glasses at the same time. It's going to be a mess. It's not going to work. So this is that if I'm rejecting the presence of Christ in my life by supplanting him with other things, I'm suffering with him. I'm suffering with him because I'm rejecting him in the way the world did, and I am bearing the price of that because I am the one who is being rejected. I am bearing the weight of the sin of the world, my sin back on top of me, and not accepting grace and mercy on top of that.
I think also for me, I found really a strong paragraph to read was in book 2. And let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 7th paragraph. And it says, if you do not know how to meditate on heavenly things, and so heavenly things would be also meditating on the suffering of God, right? How do we connect with God if we're having trouble connecting with God and bringing our mind to God? It says, direct your thoughts to Christ's passion and willingly behold his sacred wounds. If you turn devoutly to the wounds and precious stigmata of Christ, you will find great comfort in suffering. And so really, I have trouble watching anything on TV where people get like hurt and killed. And like, I don't want to watch crime shows and stuff, right? People getting hurt and blood and, you know, bludgeoning and whatever. But if you just look at a picture or think about, you know, the wound in Christ's hands and the thorns and the blood running down, and think, well, what I said or what I thought could have been one of those thorns pushing into his head. Or, you know, when I did something wrong or whatever, I could have been driving that nail and you really think about that wound, and you really think that Christ really did that for me. Christ did that for each one of us, and we're driving those nails. You know, just thinking about the stigmata can really bring you back to what that is. And then and you do feel suffering. I do feel suffering when I think about that. And then that can bring us back to that meditation on Christ and where we need to be.
Good thought. Thank you.
It is a good thought, Sue. What chapter was that? I'm sorry.
Chapter 2. And
Chapter
I don't know,
2,
maybe
book-
the 7th paragraph.
Book 2 or,
Oh, sorry, book 2, chapter 1. Book
okay,
2, chapter 1, and it's like the 7th paragraph down. It starts with, if you do not know how to meditate on heavenly things, direct your
Yeah.
thoughts to Christ's passion. And that's, you know, what I find so
Exactly.
beautiful in doing Stations of the Cross, because you walk through Christ's passion with him.
all right, thank you for clarifying. I found it.
Sorry.
Been to St. George's in Jerusalem, Sue?
Pardon?
Have you been to St. George's College in Jerusalem?
No.
You haven't? They sent out their new catalog yesterday and, oh gosh, they have special deals now, but even their special deals are a little pricey,
Ah.
but it's a great place to go. You'd love it there.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that thought. I appreciate it.
If we have time at another time, Sue, if you all wanted to go into that imagery and live in that for a while and do maybe a short study on that, we would use Julian and Norwich
Yeah.
book. That was the heart of her vision, was the crucifixion, and in a very, very graphic and very specific way that really is exactly what you're saying. And it was exactly that for Julian. It's exactly identical. So yeah. All right, we've really reached the end of our time together, I'm afraid. How quickly it runs and flies away. Joyful and wonderful to be with you and to be able to undertake this study again. I really encourage you to listen to or read the entire book as we go. The third book is the largest book. I think it's about as big as these two books combined.
Oh,
So it's going to be a bigger read. I'm going to get the reading list out to you with specific chapters. Hopefully, don't hold me to this, but hopefully tomorrow I will see if I can't put that together and get that out to you, and then so you'll have it. But in the meantime, don't wait for that to hit your email. Just go ahead and start reading. You know, I'm always going to do chapter 1, so you're safe there. But I would just say, just keep on going, and the overlap will no doubt be will be there for you. So, and Sharon, I'm going to order that book. I'll
And
let
I've
you
got
know
to order
I
a
agree.
book too.
Like I said, you can do it online. That link that I sent you online has this
Yeah.
translation for us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. God bless you. Have a wonderful, fantastic, beautiful night. And I pray that you are sorely blessed by this study and your continued reading until we meet again on next Wednesday.
Thank you for taking the time and sharing your knowledge about all of this with us.
Absolutely. It's all God. All God. Have a wonderful and blessed night, everyone.
You too.
Thank you. Night.
Bye-bye.
Hey.